Robert La Follette, Sr., that is, Robert La Follette, who was a member of the Republican Party, was frustrated as hell by the fact that the Republicans really were in bed with big business, the railway companies and the banks and so on. And he was outraged by the fact that the Republican Party seemed more committed to advancing the interests of capital rather than the interests of ordinary citizens and working people. So he literally, in essence, he kind of bolts from the Republican Party in favor of what we call capital P progressivism. Because it isn't just that they were promoting the interests, he actually was convinced that the Republican Party was corrupt and that they were in the, basically being bought off by railroads and other big businesses. So the Progressive Party was intended to be a reform party to make democracy answer to the will of the people. This was at the same time, and this is really important, the progressives, capital P, and the socialists, capital S, emerge at the same time as two significant forces in American public life. And of course, the progressives are a far more effective force in one sense, because they actually did, they elected people to office. And in fact, in 1912, which is a remarkable political year, election year, you had four major candidates running for president. So you had Howard Taft, the incumbent Republican, who was a conservative Republican. You had Teddy Roosevelt, who had been president as a progressive Republican and was now running as a progressive, capital P. It was called the Bull Moose Party. And then you had Woodrow Wilson as a Democrat. And let's make it clear, in his day, a lot of people saw Wilson as a capital P progressive, but he was a racist. Okay, he came out of Virginia. He made his political career in New Jersey, having been the president of Princeton University. And it was the longstanding joke was that Princeton University was the northernmost university of the South. Okay, maybe that was because of the racism that prevailed there, and most especially the fact that Wilson himself was the president of the university. And the fourth candidate, one of my heroes, was Eugene Debs, yep, who began really as a great railway workers union leader, okay, and was imprisoned because of the railway strike of 1894, if I'm not mistaken. But the point is, he comes out of prison all the more radicalized. Okay, not only is his earlier heroes still his heroes, Patrick Henry and Thomas Paine, but he's also now a socialist when he emerges from prison. And he becomes in time the leading figure of the Socialist Party in the United States. And in 1912, he runs as the socialist candidate for president. And they garnered, I think it was 900,000 votes. I could be wrong, but it was a really important force. And the curious thing is, it wasn't only an important force, say, among working class folk in the cities, okay, and like Milwaukee or Chicago and other places. It was actually also a significant force in rural areas at the time as well. There were vast followings of the socialists in places like Oklahoma and Texas and Kansas. So what had happened was the populists of the 1890s had basically failed to win the major election of 1896, was it, with William Jennings Bryan, who ran on the Democratic and populist ticket as a candidate of both parties. And so the Populist Party had been running out of steam, and those rural workers and family farmers who really were looking for a new political home, many of them found it in the Socialist Party. So the thing is, Wisconsin becomes a very interesting political laboratory in a way, because you've got this family, the La Follette family, who are, truly progressives out of the Republican Party. And then in certain parts of the state, most especially in Milwaukee, you get the emergence of socialist politics. And for good parts of the 20th century, the mayor of Milwaukee was a socialist. In fact, I knew the last socialist mayor of Milwaukee. He was no longer mayor, but he was still very much a socialist. And then the other thing is that even up here in Northeast Wisconsin, which is a seemingly more conservative part of the state, there were serious Socialist Party chapters. I don't know if people remember the name because most of your viewers might well be young, but there was a great American poet in the 20th century who also wrote a famous set of biographies of Lincoln named Carl Sandburg. I mean, Sandburg was just a phenomenal figure. And he's often associated with his poetry about Chicago and the great shoulders of the Chicago skyscrapers, I think, something along those lines. But the fact is his political career really began in Wisconsin. He was a socialist organizer here in Northeast Wisconsin.
Mm.
And then he was the aide, the right-hand man to the head of the Socialist Party, who I think then became mayor of Milwaukee, I mean. So the Midwest actually had a remarkable tradition of progressive politics and socialist politics,